Welcome to another episode of Breaking Into Cybersecurity, CISO Thursday, 1 p.m. live Eastern. If you're joining us on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and then the notification button right below so that you're notified when we next come on live. If you're joining us on LinkedIn, as you can see, I am not Renee. I'm coming live on her stream though. So we have an amazing CISO on today, Jerich. I saw him organize a SANS leadership event, and some of his thoughts and ideas, as well as following him on LinkedIn. I just we had to connect. We had so many things in common. I wanted to bring him on. Took a little bit, but we finally got him on. You want to introduce yourself to the audience and give a little bit of background about yourself?
Sure. Jerich Beason, I'm the CISO at Epic. I've been here for a little over a year and a half now. My career has been varied from experiences. I worked for the government for a little while at Lockheed Martin, protecting the nation's nuclear secrets. I led professional services at RSA. I worked for a management consulting firm and worked my way up to one level under partner. Pretty much done it all. I've worked for Fortune 200 as a deputy CISO, and now I'm a CISO at a startup. My entire career has been in cybersecurity, bachelor's and master's in security, got all the papers and degrees and certs that people seem to care about. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Wow. Well, first of all, I think let's talk through the differences between a deputy CISO, their responsibilities, and a CISO, because I think for those that might be looking to rise in the ranks, they might not understand where the differences lay and potentially how they can use that as a stepping stone in their career.
Yeah, so there's a few ways you can look at deputy CISO. One, you can look at yourself as a CISO in training and the right hand man or woman to the CISO. You can look at yourself as the person that is there if the proverbial bus hits the CISO.
Mhm.
You are the one in line for succession. But ultimately, deputy CISO roles vary by organization. Sometimes they lead the BESO organization. Sometimes they are over all strategy and projects. There really is no clear cut definition except for the fact that you are number two in security in the organization.
Well, you mentioned the BESO role, and that seems to be a role that I'm seeing pop up a lot more in the job listings today. How is that different? How is the BESO different from a CISO, and how can they help with the security strategy in an organization?
Yeah, so as security becomes more decentralized, we pushed out security to the businesses. Just like IT, most IT departments in large organizations have developers and IT people. So it only makes sense that you have security personnel within those business units as well. And ultimately, the BSO's role is to be intimately aware and in the weeds at the very deepest levels within the business units that they're assigned to. Sometimes it's by region, sometimes it's by business unit, sometimes it's by division. It just depends on the organization. Sometimes it's by product, right? It just depends on the organization. But ultimately, you are the eyes and the ears for the central portion of the security organization. You are going to be the first person that anyone in the business goes to if they need security advice, if they need a security review. You will be the one helping them prioritize the risks. You will be the one that intimately knows the strategy for that individual business unit and will align the security organization with that. You will be the one that fights for the support and the funding, whatever it may be, so that business unit can be properly secured. CISOs can do this, but for CISOs to do this at scale, they need a lieutenant. And in many cases, the BISO serves as that.
And do you think that a BISO would be a more interesting path for those that don't have the technical background? Like they understand the people and process, they understand some of the technology, but they're not hands in deep on the JSON scripts.
It depends on how the BISO role is structured, what level of authority the BISO role is given. In some cases, the BISO role can be, the head of governance, risk, and compliance for a business unit. In some cases, it could be the head of security architecture for a business unit. So I don't know that there's a clear-cut path, and that's pretty much going to be the case across all of security. What people don't realize is we're still a fairly new industry, even though we've been around for years. when you compare it to finance and you compare it to IT, you compare it to all the other functions that run a business, security is still in its nebulous state. And we're trying to figure things out. There really is no one right way. So I don't know that I can give an absolute response, but there are definitely scenarios where the BESO, as it's structured, can be a non-technical person, and they serve as a liaison between security and the business, and they help make good decisions for the business from a security perspective.
Okay. So, like you mentioned, there's no clear-cut path. What are some of the potential things that you're doing to grow your security pipeline and grow, say, someone coming in at a junior level that wants to be a CISO to experience some of the different things that they need to be successful while growing towards that path?
So when it comes to helping someone get to CISO, I'm probably not going to have a conversation with someone entry level about getting to CISO because there are multiple steps in between there, and there is no once again clear cut path to CISO. That being said, I'm going to get people opportunities to grow. Ultimately, you don't become the head of any business unit, the head of any function, if you haven't grown into it. You're not just given it because you have certain years of experience. You need a diversity of experiences, number one. You need progressing levels of responsibility. Number two, and you need to intimately understand how a business operates. You need to understand the finances. You need to understand what profit and margin. You need to understand EBITDA. You need to be able to understand hiring. You need to understand strategy, marketing, communications. There are a number of factors that go into becoming a CISO. But some of the things that I'm doing to develop my talent pool is I'm giving people stretch roles. People operate in their strengths, but then I give them opportunities to do things that they've never done before. If you don't do something out of the box, you won't grow because you're going to stay in that box. So it's my job to place people in positions and opportunities to get better and to experience new things. And quite frankly, to fail. I think we learn more from failure than we do from our successes. But it's also my job to protect them and to cover them when they fail, to take the credit for the failure and to pass on the credit for the successes. And it really just starts with having a conversation. Hey, what part of security interests you? Why did you want to be in security? You know, are you the geeky type or are you the policy type? I ask some of these types of questions. I also look for non-traditional candidates as well. There are so many skill sets that are needed to be a good security practitioner, and there are people that bring those skill sets without having any security background. I need someone with a mind that is always asking why. I need someone that has a thirst and a hunger for knowledge. I need someone that can think on their toes, someone that can dig through data and find that proverbial needle in a haystack, or in worst case scenario, a needle amongst needles. The whole idea of security is, I think, literally anybody could do it. It's just a matter of finding the sweet spot based off of people's skills, background, as well as personality types.
Okay. And with regards to kind of finding that skill background and personality types, I love your approach, finding diverse candidates with diverse experiences and kind of having them do things that they haven't done, like talk to executives or do security awareness conversations when they might be more technical so that they get out of their shell. What are some of the things that you might do for, say, someone in finance that's interested in security? Like, how would they transition over, and how would you help them highlight the competencies that they have that really translate over?
All right, so small example, if someone from finance wants to get into security, I don't think anybody can do security without understanding the fundamentals of IT, right? So I'd want to understand what they know about the fundamentals of IT. Let's assume they were in school for MIS and they know the basics of IT. They just ended up in a career in finance. The first question I'm going to ask them is, if you were a hacker, how would you hack the financial systems that you manage and operate? How would you get in? And I want to see how their brain works, right? I want to see, can they say, well, you know what, I'm able to log in here. I wonder if someone else can log in this way. Or nothing has ever stopped me from downloading data. I wonder if someone else could download data. Or I could change this information, but I shouldn't have access to it. I wonder if that should be if we could do something about that, right? I want to see how their brain works because ultimately I hire people for their potential, not for their experience. And if they can say, here are 10 ways that I would break this system or that I would hack this system, that shows me that they have a security mind. And then I just have to foster that and give them some of the technical acumen and some of the training and some of the tools to then parlay what they're already thinking, the way their mind works, into something that is tangible, leveraging what we already have.
Nice. Yeah, I'm of the mindset that cybersecurity is really an industry that anyone can join, whether they're coming from construction, to coming from the military, like individuals that are doing logistics. I've talked to some individuals that, oh, they've been doing logistics. I'm like, perfect. Have you considered supply chain risks and cybersecurity? I mean, your ability to trace down where something came from, who touched it all along the path, and how it could be vulnerable. That's something critical in today's supply chain.
It absolutely is, and I like that you talked about the supply chain. Going back to BESO, right? The person that understands the business the best has the best chance of securing the business. So, talk about people changing career paths. Well, if you are deeply involved in operations or whatever aspect of a certain business unit, you are probably more equipped with the foundational knowledge of the business than any person that I would go and assign. Right. So I'm either have to teach the security person the business side or I teach the business person the security side. Either way, there's an opportunity for a really good marriage. Supply chain is also a good one because they're going to have more knowledge of the suppliers in our environment. Supply chain risk is first identifying the suppliers, two, identifying the risk of those suppliers, and then three, finding a way to manage that risk. And the first step is where we usually fail.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen organizations that, because they're so large and they have so many large suppliers, they tend to only focus on the quote unquote critical ones. And then there's these medium and smaller ones that have potentially the same access. And if that access really isn't tailored properly, have exposure to the whole environment, but they're not looked at because they might only be used for one thing. So they're considered a small risk or a small supplier.
Absolutely. It only takes one. It only takes one door that they have to walk through. And then the irony is, we all focus on the large suppliers. We're literally all asking the same supplier the same questions. It's the smaller ones, it's the mom and pop shops that have smaller security teams. They're the ones that need the most attention, but they're considered the smallest. So in many cases, they get the least amount of attention. And I think we have it wrong when it comes to that. And that's just kind of the status quo of how things have been done. I personally treat the supply chain a little bit differently. I ask the questions in the questionnaires because I have to. It's just table stakes. It's the way we do things. It's part of your compliance programs. But I'm more interested in how I can make sure that that supplier's bad day doesn't become my bad day. Every supplier is going to have a bad day. Every company is going to have a compromise at some point in time, big or small. You know, Log4j is a good example of that. But what am I doing to make sure when they have a compromise, it does not negatively impact my organization? That is what I'm constantly focused on when it comes to supply chain. That is the risk that I need to focus on, not the questionnaire that asks, can you be compromised? Because the truth is, of course they can. And if I think anything other than that, you know, it's really kind of asinine. So I have a dose of reality, and I've told my teams that, hey, we're going to ask these questions because we want to know who's more likely to be compromised. But ultimately, when it happens, because it will happen, what do we do? How do we respond quickly? And how do we make sure that we mitigate that thing as quick as possible?
So one of the things I was thinking about is CMMC. Being in the DC space, I hear a lot about it. Whether you're pro or against it, I mean, I think taking a maturity model approach is a great idea. Like you said, table stakes for the small suppliers, like you set what you consider table stakes for them. But as you grow in criticality in your organization, trying to ensure that there's some sort of maturity around their security program is helpful. Have you considered implementing something like that, or maybe have in your past?
Um, So I think I told you I did government work in the past, and I never want to go back to it. Government work in many ways was paper security,
Mhm.
and CNMC is paper security in a lot of different ways. I like what the intent was, right? The intent was that we need to level up all of our suppliers. Like I was saying, your supplier could be the reason for your bad day, not anything that you've done yourself.
Mhm.
So coming up with the tiers, CNMC one, two, three, and so forth. I like where we were going with that. The problem is a few things. Number one, self attestation doesn't work. And I don't think it's
I
because of
agree.
integrity. I think people just really don't know how bad they are or how good they are.
Yeah.
And they misrepresent it intentionally or unintentionally. But then having people come in and assess doesn't always work either because they're really assessing a point in time. Anyone that's been through an audit knows the audit scramble. The auditor is coming in 2 weeks. We need to do all of these things before they get here. We will spend every resource. We will forego projects. We will make sure that that audit comes out clean. And then as soon as the auditor leaves, back to usual, back to normal. Patching doesn't happen as efficiently as it was happening in the past. Accounts aren't being reviewed as much as they were being reviewed in the past. Certain exceptions are given that may not have been given otherwise. So I think the point in time nature of a lot of these frameworks are why they're not effective to me. And then the other aspect of that is when you give people a framework, those are the bounds that they operate within. And I've yet to see a framework that requires EDR. They still require antivirus, right? So if I'm in pursuit of compliance, I'm going to give up security so that I can check that box. But if I just focus on security fundamentals, the things that are known to prevent attacks, the things that are known to mitigate attacks, the things that are known to reduce the likelihood of an attack, I'm going to check off most of the compliance boxes anyways, but I'm going to be more secure. I'm going to have enough people to respond to a crazy event like Log4j. Most of these frameworks don't even tell you that you have to have enough people to be able to respond, right? They don't say that you have to have a fully manned SOC. They tell you have to monitor, you have to log, it has to go to a SOC. It doesn't say that your SOC has to be good. It doesn't say that your SOC has to be skilled, right? So I try not to lean too much on the frameworks. I use them as a guidepost, but they are not the end all and be all for me. Now, one thing the CMC did do is they classified their suppliers. That I do, right? Some suppliers are more risky than others, so some require some level of continuous monitoring. Some need to have a checkup more often. Some need to align with certain authentication controls we may have, or they need to have some type of legal language in their contracts to give them another little bit of a, of a push to do the right thing from a security perspective. And you can do those things based off of risk qualifications and risk how you classify your suppliers. But other than that, I do my best not to subscribe to a framework that I'm not forced to.
Agree there. And I think that continuous monitoring is both a good thing and a challenge for many organizations. Some might be able to continuously monitor themselves, but then as you bring in now third party risks and monitoring their risks, you have to become a more mature organization yourself. Now you have to start to ingest threat intelligence, monitor threat landscape, see how if those suppliers are attacked, how that impacts you, how that impacts your whole organization. And then even like the right to audit, I think like even the right to audit that might be in some of those legal contracts doesn't really get executed enough. Like it's there as a option, but then no one really ever does it. And I think when it comes to your critical suppliers, if that's something that gets executed more often and they know that, that might be something to consider as an option to ensure that you're doing the right things, in addition to continuous monitoring, because you're only potentially monitoring one or two feeds from them, that they're either up to date, that you're patched in certain systems, but outside of that, you don't have a view to their entire scope.
Yeah, I agree with the point on the right to audit. The challenge with the right to audit is most people don't have the bandwidth and the team strength to be able to actually carry that out. The amount of effort that it takes to carry out an audit and it not just be lip service, it's pretty intensive. And as you know, we are already at a talent deficit. If organizations were to take on the cost of actually carrying out audits against their suppliers, that would mean pulling away people from doing some of the other strategic things within that organization. Large banks, large Fortune 500s, not even all the Fortune 500s, they can afford it. Some of your large tech companies, they can afford it. But 90, if not higher, percent of companies, they don't have enough personnel to be able to audit their suppliers.
So you mentioned Log4j and understanding that risk within the supply chain. What are some of the techniques that an organization can use to ensure that when it comes to their software supply chain, that they fully understand everything that they're inheriting from outside companies as part of their infrastructure, as part of the applications that you're building, or products that you're serving to their own customers?
Yeah, the word insure scares me a little bit. I work for a legal company. I've learned not to use words like insure these days. But what I can say is the way that you mitigate something like this is to have a full understanding of what's out there. When Log4j or any other type of vulnerability comes out, you want to be able to quickly identify all instances. Before any mitigation, before any prevention, before any controls, any patching, you need to be able to say, these are the 17 cases that we need to address. And then you go and address them. In some courses, it's 1,700 cases that we need to address. And you do that a few different ways. Number one, asset management. You need to have a full inventory of all of your systems in a centralized place and all of the applications and software on those systems. WebEx is a very common product. WebEx was vulnerable. People needed to be able to see all the devices that had WebEx so that they could patch it. Elasticsearch was another common one. A lot of developers are using Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch has components for Log4j inside of it. You need to be able to quickly say, these are all the places where we have these different components that have Log4j. That's the first thing. Second thing, we talked about suppliers and vendors. If you do business with any vendor or supplier, many of them have come out and said, our component is vulnerable, our component is not vulnerable. You need to be able to pull up your entire list of all your suppliers and vendors very quickly, have points of contact for all of those suppliers and vendors, and be able to reach out and say, do I have an exposure because of your solution, yay or nay? And then thirdly, for all of your developed stuff, you need an SBOM, right? An SBOM has an inventory of all of the libraries. So many companies just didn't even know what libraries were in use, and they had to ask individual developers. They inherited applications that developers left long ago, and they didn't have, the in-house knowledge. If you can reference your SBOMs and you can see all the different places where those libraries are used, you're going to be in better shape when it comes to responding. Now, the actual ability to respond, that's a whole nother conversation. That depends on manpower. It depends on capability. It depends on what the vendors have made available to you. It depends on the tooling that you have. If you have edge protections, you should be making use of your WAF, or you should be making use of some of the outbound controls that you can put into your firewalls. There's a lot of different ways you can mitigate it, but ultimately it starts with understanding your environment.
Well, you've mentioned at least four different topics when it comes to developing a security program that those that are looking to grow up into this type of role can take into consideration. First is understanding their application environment and an SBOM. I know when it comes to software bill of materials, that's a newer concept that have not been implemented or you don't see as often today. And it is a challenge when you don't understand when someone wants to install a software on their machine and you have all these one-offs in the organization, what your risk is from allowing those one-off exceptions. The next thing you talked about was an asset management program. A lot of companies even struggle with that, and that's like the number one CIS control is understanding what all your machines are and what's running in your environment, and then developing that incident response plan for that, and understanding your points of contacts, and potentially having an offline version that everyone can look at, because in the incident that you potentially have a ransomware or that sort of incident, you might not be able to access your centralized list. And so coming up with those sorts of incident response plans for those responders, as well as legal, CISOs, other department heads, having them in the conversation as well as to how you would respond in those situations, developing potentially tabletop exercises or other practice sessions throughout the year so that it's fresh in their minds.
Precisely. You brought up incident response. That's an interesting one to talk about because the average organization, you ask about incident response, it's how do you respond when you have an incident in your environment? There's malicious code, there's a bad actor inside of your environment, something malicious is actively happening. How do you respond? Well, in my SOC, I have a fusion center, so I combine the vulnerability team and the SOC team and AppSec team and a few other teams together in a single location. We also have other playbooks that are outside of just responding to an incident. For the case of Log4j, we have a playbook called Celebrity Vulnerability Playbook. And I call the celebrity vulnerabilities the ones that make the news, right? There's all kind of vulnerabilities, but there are some that everybody knows about, like the celebrity. How do we deal with celebrity vulnerabilities? How do we communicate internally, externally, and how do we kind of rally the troops to identify exposure and address exposure? That's a playbook in itself, and it doesn't mean anything bad has ever happened. It just means you have to identify if something bad has happened, and if you do find something, then you kick off your actual incident response playbook to then go address it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just identifying all the players that are involved in any given playbook across the organization, that becomes a challenge because you have to understand the relationships, how the business really works, and then deciding who might have the authoritative voice in a serious incident. Like, is it a CISO that takes charge? Is it whoever takes charge in a disaster situation? Because there could be an outage of facility, there could be an outage of people, there could be an outage of access to connectivity. Those all those different outages require a totally different response.
Precisely.
So, with regards to developing a I would say a hybrid environment that we're in from COVID, right? What are some of the things that you're doing to attract and retain talent that's either looking to find a new role or even within your organization looking for that internal mobility? What are some of your recommendations to attract and retain talent today?
Uh, so from an attracting talent perspective, I'm finding that my presence on social media is attracting talent. Um, People want to work for people that they like. And some people do, and some people don't like some of the things that I have to say. But for the ones that do like what I have to say, if I have a role open, they say this is somebody that I would want to work for. I appreciate his ideologies. I appreciate his approach to business. I appreciate his X, Y, and Z. This is someone that I want to work for. So, I put out a post on LinkedIn and I get, a bunch of people applying, and not just entry level, but people that are mid level as well. And they're the hardest ones to find. So I guess having some level of presence or brand, if you will, can help when it comes to attracting employees. But then also employees today, especially the people that are experienced, they're interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing them. So it's important that you lay out a career path in the interview process. It's important that you help them understand your core values and what your mission and what your strategy is and how they're going to fit into that. And that same thing applies to your existing people. People are ready to jump ship left and right. In security, they're getting thrown all kinds of crazy money. So people need to feel as if they have a purpose. So it's important that every single person on my team, they know their purpose. They know exactly how their role fits into our strategy. They need to know what our career path is. Here's your career path if you're an individual contributor, because you really don't ever want to manage people, but you want to be really deep in a technical subject. And here's your career path if you want to be a people manager and you want to grow through leadership and through shaping and molding the future cyber professionals of tomorrow, and giving people clear direction on how they can get from notch one to notch two on that career path is important because then they can work towards something. They don't feel like they have to leave to go and get that something. That's something that I do. And I say this all the time, just just be a good human. I mean, care about people. Make people want to work for someone that cares about them. I don't want to work for someone that doesn't care about me, straight up. And a happy worker is a productive worker. I believe as an employee, people that are in their sweet spot, doing the things that they love and they're strong at, those are satisfied employees. And the job of a leader is to put people into their sweet spot.
So you mentioned some of that mid-level talent. At a certain point, there's some level of leadership. Whether or not they want to manage people, they still have to understand how to guide people, how to influence people. What are some of the ways that you help develop these? They're called soft skills, but they're really the hardest skills to master. What are some of the ways that you help develop those skills?
Yeah, so whenever I'm hiring somebody, soft skills are the first thing I'm looking for. I find that they're the hardest to develop. I can't teach people the things that their parents should have taught them as kids, right? They learn them early on. I can't teach someone that is unlikable to be likable, right? So there are certain things that I look for in the interview process, head and shoulders over technical, because we can teach technical. I can't teach you to show up to a meeting on time. I can't teach you to care about the people that you work with, right? So those are the things that I'm searching for. Now, how do we further develop those soft skills? Through opportunities and, like I said, through stretch assignments to demonstrate them. I'll give you a perfect example. My head of identity, I tasked her with developing my executive communication for Log4j. It has nothing to do with identity, but I wanted her to get the experience of drafting an executive communication that goes to the CEO. And then after she drafted it, I worked with her to say, here's what I would change. I would do this a little bit differently. But other than that, 80% of this was good. We're going to send it exactly as you wrote it, right? Except for these changes. That gave her experience that she otherwise would have never had. But because one day she wants to be a CISO. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to do the things that a CISO may do. That does a few different things. Number one, it shows her that I believe she can get there, because why would I try to develop her into something that I don't think she can become? But two, it makes her want to stay because she's going to get opportunities for growth. And then three, I've now developed somebody that can do something in my absence if I'm not able to do it. So it's a win for everybody.
Absolutely love that. And one of the things I'm also doing on the side is I'm an adjunct professor. And this semester, I'm teaching a master's course, intro into like cyber governance. And the first announcement I send out is, "Hey, you are the CRO of Acme Inc., and you will be briefing the board every single week. So every written assignment that they have to write about, I want them to pivot from just doing academic writing to think about things from a business perspective and create an actionable report as to what you want done to move this forward. Because it's one thing to just write about Log4j, it's another thing to write about Log4j and then make recommendations that people can actually use. And I think that difference is what highlights what you're looking for. So I want them to get in the habit of kind of creating those actionable reports.
I think that's great. Being able to put together a solid business level email is not something that most schools are teaching. Most kids don't even know how to use Outlook when they first start, right? So there are just some basic fundamentals that if we can get them into people in their college or even in high school, we're just going to be better off when they enter the workforce.
You mentioned getting these into colleges and high schools. What are some of the things that we can do with regards to creating a pipeline for the future to make cybersecurity a career that people want and not just something that they find out about by the time you're done with college, so that you're interested when you're 7 or 8? Because by the time you get to graduating high school, you pretty much decided what you want to do or what you don't want to do. And they might have ruled out anything technology related by that time.
We need to find more ways to celebrate the cybersecurity professionals that are out there. I mean, I've said this before, but most people, when they're growing up, they're told you have to be an engineer, a lawyer, or a doctor if you want to make good money. Now people might see, tech entrepreneur potentially, or maybe a social media star or whatever, right? So there's a very narrow set of career paths where you are thought to have a guaranteed good life from a financial perspective. We need to show people that there are many other ways now, and IT and cyber is definitely one of those ways where you can have a very lucrative career, and have a lot less school than some of those other paths, that we talked about. I think that's one thing. We need to find ways to get it into classes in K through 12. The earlier people find out about it, the more likely it is to be on their potential career list. People in college have made their decision in many cases, about what they want to do, at least if it's technical or non-technical, and then potentially even whatever the field may be. So I think just the earlier we get it in there, more mentorship opportunities. I don't know if career days are a thing still, but if you have an opportunity for a career day and you're in cyber, go show people that it's an option. You don't have to be a hacker. You can be a lot of other things and still be in cyber.
Absolutely. And I have a question for you. One of the things that I'm in a nonprofit called Whole Cyber Human Initiative, and we're kind of we're in the mindset that cyber is a trade like many other trades, and creating apprenticeships are a great way to bring individuals into this because, like you mentioned, a lot less school. Most of the learning is done on the job, and you could teach someone that on the job versus going to school that focuses just on the theory and less on the hands-on applicability. Um, would that be something that you see that you can implement in your organizations or future organizations?
100%. I had internship over the last summer. One of them was in college, and one of them was a single mom looking to make a change. And I have a belief, and this is just my thought, that single moms would add so much value to cybersecurity because they are by far some of the most resourceful, people that are out there. If they are a single mom, they're going to be hungry and they're going to have a desire to really be successful, because they're a single mom. They have a family and kids to take care of. I also think in general we need more women. So yeah, create internships for niche areas potentially. Um, I am in the process right now of, instead of asking for another head, right, I'm asking for a revolving for intern, type of deal where instead of giving me, let's just say, $70,000 to hire somebody, give me, 4 $15,000 internships for people who work, for me over a 3 month period, and I'll get 4 different people in, and I'm gonna still spend the same amount of money, as I would spend on a single person, maybe even less, because people that are working internships don't have benefits. But we will send people off either to other organizations that have 3 years of solid experience that we would structure specifically so they can leave better than they came, or I have a pipeline of 4 people that I can then go ahead and hire right afterwards. Of the two, one of them is working for us now, and the other one, is graduating college next year, and maybe she'll come work for us as well.
One of the past organizations that I worked for, they had this amazing program. And what it did is it hired on interns, but treated them like consultants. So they were brought in and they would go to finance, they would go to IT, they would go to all the different departments, and then they would rotate around. And one of the amazing things that that did is as they got to go know the different departments, they knew who to contact. They knew who to reach out to. They built those relationships across the organization. And then once they're tasked with a project, because everyone knows that these interns are something prized by the C-level suite, and they're working as consultants for the C-level suite. They're able to accomplish so much more that otherwise a typical consultant might not be able to do. And you're hungry for it too, because they're wanting to learn and they're wanting to demonstrate their skill all at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We did something similar, not at the C level, but what we did was we rotated them through cyber. So, the first quarter of the time you're spending time with the Fusion Center, the second quarter you're spending time with our GRC function, next you're spending time with identity, next you're spending time with architecture and engineering. And it was for a few reasons. One, I wanted them to get exposure to all areas of cyber.
Mhm.
Two, I wanted to potentially give each one of those leaders an opportunity to see someone they may want to hire. And three, most people want to join cyber but don't know what they want to do in cyber. And they try to
Yes.
figure it out through like taking Security Plus training or what they see online, but they don't really know until they do it. So being able to let them immerse themselves within all areas of cyber, they get to actually select the path that they want to take and move forward in. And at the end, I let them do a presentation on the area that they like the most in cyber and what they learned. So
Wow.
that's
I,
semi
I,
similar.
I I love that. That's like an apprenticeship right there because you're figuring out the different areas, you're learning the different skills, and then you're kind of learning the soft skill at the same time by doing the presentation. Um, how's that? How can we multiply that approach and spread that across other organizations? Have you created like a case study on that and how we could try to replicate that?
I haven't. I only did it once. I don't know if I can have a case study on doing it once. I may have struck gold. Not sure yet, right? Or I may have gotten lucky. Um, but no one's asked me to do a case study, so I have to think about that. The Where I would do a case study is on my plan to have a rotating intern. Um, I find that too often we only hire interns in the summer.
Hmm.
And when you hire interns in the summer, that's only one set of students. That's students that are coming from four-year institutions.
Hmm.
But there are students that just took certifications. There are students that went the trade route. There are people that are getting back into the workforce and they can come and do internships at any point in time. And unfortunately, they're competing with the college kids. And honestly, the college kids usually take precedence. I really am highly interested in people with prior experiences, not just the diversity of thought, but just the professionalism that they're going to come to work with. Starting as a 30-year-old in cyber or even a 40 or 50-year-old in cyber, they're going to bring something different to the table than the person that I have to teach, when to put BCC and when not to put BCC. So, yeah, I like the idea of having interns start in December, having interns start in June, having interns start in April.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that when I talk to, I've been talking to a lot of military veterans because the whole cyber human initiatives, there's several vets in there. So we talk to a lot of them, and like you said, they want to join cyber. They don't know what they want to do. So one of the things that we talk about is those skills and competencies from their former roles that they've done and how that can apply to cyber.
Mm.
Um, have you seen any good resources that you would recommend for us to include or for them to consider with regards to doing that self discovery and figuring out what path might be helpful for them?
It's interesting that you say that. So in my past, I've helped people with non-traditional backgrounds break into cyber. Um, Two examples come to mind. One person was a pilot, and they had no IT experience. I say, hey, go get the Security Plus, and if I have an opportunity, I'll bring you on. And what I saw when I looked into his experience as a pilot and I asked questions, pilots have to have a level of situational awareness. They have to be calm under pressure. They have to be able to analyze a lot of data and make decisions very quickly. They have to be able to talk people down when they're freaking out because something has occurred. There are a lot of capabilities that a pilot brings to the table that a lot of cyber people don't even have. So I was able to take that experience plus him getting a security plus and say, this is the type of person that we want on our team. Number one, he went on and got security plus with no experience, no IT at all. So that shows a level of aptitude. But two, this guy was a proven pilot. He fired as a pilot. He just left the job because he wanted
Hmm.
something different. And there's an opportunity there. Another person that I helped get into cyber was working at Home Depot, and they were a customer service person. They moved up the ranks into various levels of management, but their job was conflict resolution more than anything. That's what managers do in a lot of these retail stores. And if I can't tell you that conflict resolution is tied to our job, then I don't know what is, right? Customer service, making people happy, making people want to come to you and talk to you. Part of the problem with security is people swerve and try to go around us and avoid us because they don't like us. They don't like how we operate. They don't like us saying no all the time, right? So finding someone that knows how to communicate with people and knows how to reach people where they are, Now you just got to give them the cyber content to lead with that, and you have someone that could be really good in a GRC type of role potentially, or even someone that could eventually become, a security awareness or BESO. The list goes on and on. I'm currently working with a teacher that wants to move in, and she has all these ideas on how to reach people verbally and using different kinetic types of trainings and so forth, things that they are taught how to reach little people with small brains. Imagine what they could do with big people with big brains, right? And the patience that they have, right? So I haven't done it in a while, but I was running a small little resume service. So I'll look at people's resumes, give them tips and pointers, and help them kind of take their non-traditional background and apply it to a security background.
I absolutely love that. I know one of the things that I was helping someone with is they a lot of people don't know how to write about themselves.
Mm.
They could write all the things that they've done, but they don't know how to convert that into actionable results or something that would show, hey, I'm a problem solver, or hey, I could deal with conflict resolution. Look at a situation that I did. This is what I did to resolve that situation, and these were the results. They don't think to write like that. They're like, oh yeah, just customer management, or they write like the plain tasks. What are some of the ways that you think individuals can include that value in their resume?
I think this one is preference because I've seen a lot of different theory on how a resume should be written. I think there are, three core things to having a good resume. The first thing is you need to have 3 to 5 sentences at the very beginning that makes me want to read down further. And it can be loyal, hardworking, experienced. Nobody cares about any of that. Tell me something that's real and authentic about you that maybe will make you different from other candidates that I see. That's the first thing. The second thing is look at all of the job descriptions that you're going to be submitting this resume for and identify the top 10 to 15 keywords that are common amongst all of them. Because a lot of these job search in recruiters, they're scanning for certain keywords. So if you don't have the word cyber anywhere on your resume, I had a guy who's coming out of IT and he was trying to move into IT. He didn't have the word cyber anywhere on his resume. He had the word security anywhere on his resume. He was like, I could do it. He was like, but that wasn't my job. Like, if you were the director of IT, you had some level of security responsibility. You need those words on your resume to even, you know, trip the radar. So that's the second thing that I would say. And then the third thing is only put the relevant experiences for the job that you're going after. And it can't be managed people, right? It can't be ran patch team. No, grew patch team from X to X, uh, cut patch window down from 14 days to 7 days, implemented X, Y, and Z type of patching strategy. You have to give the reader an impression of what you're going to do for them, not just managed the patching team. Um, those are some of the tips that I would give. The latter only matters if the first two things are done. If you don't have a good catchy or a good, initial
You
comment
statement,
about
yeah.
yourself and you don't trip the keywords, nobody will see anything else.
So speaking of not being able to trip the keywords, what's your view on networking?
Hmm. um, number one part of getting a job today, 100%. I don't want to reference posts that I've had, but the reality is I am a strong believer that who you know is far more than what you know in today's climate. And who you know is purely based off of the relationships that you've had, but more importantly, the relationships that you've fostered and maintained. There are people that I worked with 10 years ago that I haven't talked to in 10 years. I, I'm not comfortable going to them and saying, hey, can you get me the job at this company that you have, at your company. But if I've communicated with people, saw them, whatever it may be, I'm far more comfortable with that. And I can tell you that whenever I have a job opening, if someone I know places a resume in front of me, I'm far more likely to look at it than anything one of the recruiters are going to bring to me. Because if someone brings it to me, it tells me at the very least they're willing to put their neck out on the line for this person. So I go back to the very basics. They're going to show up to meetings on time. You cannot find that in an interview. You will never know in an interview if someone's going to show up to a meeting on time. You'll never know, right? And something as small as that is a huge difference in hiring the smartest, greatest person, but then they turn out to be just mean, or they turn out to just be undependable, or whatever it is. So we can kind of weed out those types of people by leveraging a relationship and a referral.
And talking about building and maintaining those relationships in a world where we might have less physical events, what are some of the ways that you build your brand or continue to build those relationships in a virtual environment?
I'm just helpful whenever somebody needs help. I rarely ignore a message. I miss some at times because I get so many. um, but yeah, I respond. Just be kind. Put your real self out there. I'm unapologetically authentic for a few reasons. There are things that are this is the way Jerich does things. I'm a millennial. I think like a millennial, and so I'm going to approach things like a millennial. If you don't like that, I want you to know ahead of time. I don't want you to come on board and be like, oh my gosh, this millennial guy is trying to have short meetings, and this millennial guy is trying to have frequent check-ins and not just once a year check-ins, or he's offering me more PTO. What I really want is more whatever authority. I don't
Yeah.
know, right? I just want people to know like this is the guy that I'm coming to work for. And if I like it, let's go for it. And if I don't like it, there's plenty of other companies that are going to manage and do things a little bit differently. Um, so for me, that's really important. Um, and then yeah, just reaching out to people, for the relationships that really matter most to you. If you have, thousands and thousands of connections, you can't do that with the thousands. But for the ones that really matter, make sure that they know that you're on their radar.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I tried to do was um, comment on their posts or their threads, but comment with something helpful. If you're looking for reach, help them with reach, but also be a connector of people. I think when, say, you're looking for this, you have this problem, and I know someone else that can help you solve that problem by connecting two other people together. That also builds relationships because now you know three people and you connected some, and there's some built-in value there as well.
Absolutely. Um, there are so many ways that you can kind of get your name out there and that you can keep your name on people's minds. Putting posts that are relevant, resharing things that should be reshared, adding value. Ultimately, my job and my mission is to add value to people's lives. And I'm trying to do that using the platform that I have, happens to be LinkedIn. And the way I approach it is I am trying to democratize leadership strategies. I don't want all the strategies that are in my head to go away with me when I go away one day. I want it to all be out there on paper and video, on podcast form. And I want people years from now to be able to learn from those, benefit from those, and expand on those, right? I am built on the top of leaders before me. There's an ancient quote, I can't remember who it's attributed to, but it says, when you're eating fruit, don't forget the person that planted the tree, right? And I keep those types of things in mind because I want to constantly just make people's lives better. And when you do that, sometimes you don't have to maintain the relationship. People want to maintain that relationship with you because they see you helping them in many ways. And I think that's the next level when you don't have to try hard and people are actually trying to do it themselves. But yeah, just work your way up to that and start by being a good person and just trying to help one person at a time.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And that's the foundation of this podcast is when I was coming up, I had so many folks help me throughout my journey that I wanted to find a way to scale my help, and I chose podcasting and live streams, LinkedIn as the ways to do it. One of the comments we have from Will S. Uh, Thanks, Jared and Chris. Really interesting discussion. Some good classics covered here that should help folks breaking into to understand the concerns of potential employers, compliance versus security, business CISO versus technical CISO, third-party risk, supply chain management, and of course, Log4Shell and the implications of such celebrity vulnerability events. Fantastic formats, philosophies, beliefs, initiatives, great stuff. And I mean, that's the
Humble. Thank
reason.
you.
Absolutely, and thank you for coming on. That's the reason that we have these podcasts is to share that information. And I love the idea of the celebrity vulnerability. I'm going to take that because I mean, 9 months ago we had SolarWinds, and that was all the rage. Now we have Log4Shell, and I mean, before that there was Meltdown, and there's Spectre, and you name it. So calling it a celebrity vulnerability is definitely a great playbook to have. Um, we're coming to the end of the program, and one of the things that I love to do is, if you had like to summarize everything into one piece of sage advice for someone following in your footsteps, how would you do that, and what might that be? The hard question, I think.
Man, that is tough. I guess the easy answer is follow me. I got a bunch more of this, but no, no, seriously. What I would say is read, read, and read a lot. People ask me, I'm 35 years old, right? And that is that is not very old in the grand scheme of things, but I have the experience of someone that's 150 because I've read the books of people that have lived lives 3 times my life. Before I had actual mentors in the physical sense, my mentors were all the different books that I read. I now listen to podcasts, I consume YouTube videos and so forth, but I still stick with the books. I have books behind me. Every single one of them have shaped who I am, my philosophies, my ideologies. And the more you read, the smarter you will become. And if you stop reading, you are just going to limit the amount of information that you can have. And there's one more thing I would say on that is people are drowning in information and they're starving for knowledge. When you have knowledge, share it. Keeping it in is one of the most selfish things that you can do because people will benefit from it and you have no idea how many lives you are touching. You have no idea how many generations you are affecting simply by just giving a small little piece of knowledge.
Wow. David says, excellent comment. Read a lot. Knowledge is amazing. And one of the things for me, as both a leader and a coach, is for individuals to figure out the best format for them, right? You might be a physical person. You like to sit back and read those physical books. For me, I'm an auditor person. So I have a million, well, probably several hundred books in my Audible library, and I listen to podcasts all the time because for me, listening to it, I can ingest it, and I can ingest it at like triple the speed. But yeah, that's just my approach. Others, they like to see video, like this one on YouTube. They have to see the interactions, they have to see how it done, and then others they have to actually do it.
Mm.
So, some can hear the steps and figure out how it all works. Others, they really have to practice it 4 or 5 times to be able to get it done. So, yeah, knowledge is always amazing. And then we have a comment over here from Bill. Jared, how have you been? So
Not as good
you're
as you since you
you're
lost
following
Tom.
us here.
Not as good as you since you lost Tom. That's how.
Uh, Great insights today. Thank you for sharing. Any books that you would recommend?
There's so many. I share the same one, and I probably should come up with a new one eventually. But there's a book behind me. It's called The Mamba Mentality by Kobe Bryant. He's a basketball guy, but ultimately it talks about how to pursue your passion and to pursue that passion with 100% of you. And security, you will not succeed if you're not passionate in security. You are going to have late Friday nights. You are going to have things like Log4j that take you away from your family around the holidays. You are going to have to learn on a regular basis. And if you don't have a passion for it, you're going to give it up and you're going to burn out. The passion that I have for security, which is what I've done in my entire career, got my bachelor's and master's in it, every single job I've had, it's what's kept me going, it's what's helped me propel. So that book helped me with that. And another one is The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey. Ultimately, as a leader in security, you need to develop trust. And if people don't trust you, they won't follow you.
I love Stephen Covey's books, The Habits, and those have changed my life. And then I've seen some amazing podcasts with Kobe, just the determination that he has in
100%.
training for his passion. And it was amazing the other things outside of sports that you don't see. But looks like Bill has some comments for you.
Oh man,
Well, I want I want
Bill,
to
you're
thank.
gonna get what Santa's leaving you.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so
All right,
much for your
Chris.
time today.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it. Happy to come on any other time. But I want to say, like, this has been such a great conversation. Share it with folks. If you're listening on YouTube, share the link, reshare the link. If you're listening on podcast, share it with others so that they could get interested as well. And follow us on LinkedIn and then you can get some more amazing advice every time we post.
All right.
But thanks
Thanks, guys. I
everyone, and
appreciate it.
have a great day.